Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Welcome to the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy with you on, wow, do we have so much content coming your way, we don't even know how to remember it all. This is a huge show for us, and one that I'm really excited about. Special guest with us tonight, or today rather, I should say. Bo Clark, the all-time leading scorer in the history of UCF basketball, longtime head coach at Flagler College. Of course, his father, Torchy Clark, is the godfather, the man who birthed UCF basketball when the program first started. Still the program's all-time leader in wins as a head coach. Bo has just finished and released his book, Torchy, The Humble Life of a Coaching Legend, and we are among the first to talk to him about it. A look back at the life of his father. A forward by Rocky Blyer, the former Pittsburgh Steeler. Bo spent, it was a labor of love of him putting this book together, and we get to talk about it. We spent a good hour plus with him, Eric Lopez. It was fantastic. I can't wait to get it to you. So, Jeff, Eric, and Brian with you here. As usual, we will also be talking about a couple of other things. Brian, I know you've got some interesting stuff coming on down the pike with Novell Clark, which we'll be talking about, and I know you've been burning the midnight oil, keeping an eye on Ben Lively, right?
I mean, it's not the midnight oil, but it's more like the 5:30 a.m. oil. The oil, it's still good.
It's midnight, not far. It's midnight. It's midnight West Coast. No, it's not midnight West Coast time.
It's like what Jimmy Buffett always said. It's midnight somewhere. Wait, what?
Right. Exactly. So we've got that and so much more here for you on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. But I want to dive into this interview real quick with Bo Clark, who is so thankful to. We are so thankful to him to come on the show and spend some time with us and share stories. And it's if you're a UCF basketball fan, you're going to love this. If you're a UCF historian, you're going to really love this. As he goes over the not just his time at UCF and afterwards, but especially the subject of the book, his father, Torchy Clark, who of course passed away in 2009, far too soon. But just an excellent look at their life together, and most of all, Torchy's life in coaching, and how much he meant to everyone who he came across. So without further ado, here's our interview with Bo Clark. Joining us now, he is a UCF and, well, really Florida legend when it comes to college basketball. He is still, to this day, UCF's all-time leading scorer, and holder of numerous records, still in the UCF record book. Just recently retired after a few years ago, after 31 years as the head coach at Flagler College, and of course in his time at UCF he played for his dad, Torchy Clark, and he is also, as of today, we're recording this on Wednesday, May the 13th, a published author, as his new book, Torchy, has just come out, about basically a biography of his dad and a chronicle of Torchy Clark's experiences in life and in the game of basketball. Bo Clark joining us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Coach Clark, it really is an honor to have you on the show. Congratulations on the book. How you doing?
Good. Great to be with you guys, Jeff and Eric, and Go Knights, and that. So it was really a big day today. I really got a lot of feedback, some real positive feedback on Facebook and Twitter about the book. So it's really kind of an exciting time, and it's just really was an honor for me to actually write a book on Torchy. And, I retired from Flagler after, as you mentioned, 31 years in 2017. And I was kind of toying with the idea, maybe teaching at Flagler, almost like what my dad did at UCF after he was done coaching. He taught in the physical education department. And then I just, was talking to my brother Mike, and he actually is one of the all-time leading scorers at UCF and had a great career. Actually scored 2,085 points. But the reason I know that is because it's in the book. But anyway, we were talking, and my dad died in 2009, and this was like about 8 years later. We were at my brother's house, and I was running I still do basketball camps in Orlando at the Winter Park YMCA, and then in Altamont, and this summer, who knows about with camps and so forth, with the COVID and so forth. But we were just talking, and we were, one night, we do camp in the morning, and then I stayed at his house for 3 or 4 nights a week, and then he showed me when we went in one of his extra bedrooms, and he had about 3 or 4 boxes of, Torchy clippings, Torchy notes, Torchy, articles from Xavier, articles from UCF, even some practice plans. And I said to my brother Mike, I said, Mike, this, I don't know if I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to commit to it, but I'm going to try to maybe write the first chapter on Dad and see how it turns out. And the first chapter is called I'm from Oshkosh, and it's really, Torchy as a kid. He was born January 1st in 1929, so really the first day of the Depression. Mm-hmm. And then it kind of snowballed into chapter 2, and I had both of my brothers kind of almost be like the advanced scout, checking out the chapter and saying, hey, it's really good here, and then I just kept going, and lo and behold, here I am 2 years later, with 37 chapters and a book that just came out. So it's an exciting time.
It's a labor of love, too. The book, the full title of the book is Torchy, The Humble Life of a Coaching Legend. The foreword was written by former Pittsburgh Steeler and Super Bowl champion Rocky Blyer, who played for your dad, Torchy, when he was also the football coach at Xavier High School in Wisconsin. I guess I want to go back to that point right there, because you're a kid,
sure,
right? And your dad is coaching.
I was 12 when we moved from Appleton.
Right.
And my dad took the, back then it was Florida Tech, Technological University, and slash UCF. And in the book, I had to kind of make a decision kind of early when I was writing. I said, do we want to go FTU or do we want to just, and I said, you know what, everybody knows it as UCF. So I have a paragraph, when I about the middle of the book, after Xavier, and when he got the job at FTU, I kind of explained that, for 10 years, the university was called Florida Technological University. And I just thought it would be really hard for like a reader that like from Texas or California or even Wisconsin, hey, one minute he's talking about Florida Tech, the other minute he's talking about UCF. So I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna say UCF, and there's a few times I say FTU / UCF, but yeah, we moved from Appleton in 1969.
Yeah, and at Xavier, he coached both football and basketball, which is his record in both was astounding. I think I'm trying to pull it up here from what I can see, but it is.
I got it.
277, 35, and 2. Is that?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was amazing, and this was in the 1960s, and these are all things that I talk about in the book, because it's really about Torchy's life. It's not the father and son story. I know that you got the banners in the gym, but who knows? Maybe down the road I'll write a book on that. But this is like truly, this book is on his life and his legacy. And it was, that was in the 60s, and at a lot of schools, it was a Catholic school. They had about 1,000 students. It was called Xavier High School, and it's in Appleton, Wisconsin. They still have a great sports program there, and but Torchy was and that's what I kind of throughout the book. I just call him Torchy. I thought it would be too hard to say, my dad did this, my dad. So,
right.
so I had a writer that just said, hey, just go through first and just kind of refer to him Torchy. And then sometimes I'll say like, the UCF, Hall of Famer. But he was the head football coach and the head basketball coach. And the amazing thing was he, like, for example, when Rocky Blyer played for my dad, Rocky was a real good basketball player too.
Mm-hmm.
And Rocky and Torchy in the 3 years together, their record in both sports combined was 96-4.
Wow.
And that just, they had 2 state championships. Actually they've won a state championship, and this is one of the chapters too, in 1962-63, the academic year. They won a championship with my dad as the head coach in football. They were 9-0, and then in basketball they were 25-0. And back then in Wisconsin, back then they didn't have playoffs. It was almost like how college football was 10 years ago, where you had to finish as the number 1 team to win the national championship, and sometimes it would end up being a tie. But when Rocky played there, and it was really, Rocky did an unbelievable job on the forward. It couldn't have been better. And I actually got a chapter kind of devoted to Rocky, and got some great stuff in that chapter. I think people will really enjoy. It's not, I talk about the Steelers maybe like for a paragraph, like before the chapter starts, but it's mostly, Rocky playing for Torchy, and they were really, really, really close. Not just because they won, but they had a tremendous relationship. I mean, my dad lived about a mile from Xavier, and Rocky lived about 3 blocks. And Appleton, they have like about 75,000 people in the city, but back then it was about 50,000. It was really a nice place to grow up in the Midwest, and it was really like, for me being a 12-year-old, that was really a tough time to leave. I left. We drove down to Orlando when I'll never forget. We played in my Little League All-Star game. I was 2 for 3, and right after the game was over, we all jumped in the station wagon and headed to Orlando to start the program at UCF. But the success that they had there, and even after Rocky was gone, he graduated in '64. My dad every year was like 25-3 or 24-2, and it was just amazing the success that he had. And he always, and I got this in the book too, he said that he thought he was actually a better football coach than a basketball coach.
Really?
And a lot of people wouldn't know that, but that was the time and place when it was probably maybe about 5 out of 8 of the coaches that he coached against, in his conference, coached both basketball and football. And the amazing thing was that not only did he coach basketball and football, but he also refereed too. And he did that like on Saturday night. Sometimes he would ref a game an hour away and make $40 or whatever. And I kind of talk about that in one of the chapters. And but it was Xavier's a very, very big part of the book, and it's it's really a special place. And my dad has unbelievable feelings with Xavier. And ironically, the athletic director at Xavier was a freshman at Xavier when my dad was there in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a neat thing too, that the gym is named after my dad up there. It's kind of neat when you drive up by the road and see the Torchy Clark gym, so.
That's pretty cool. By the way, recommended viewing for all you UCF fans about Rocky Bleier. If you ever see the America's Game by NFL Films on the -- Pittsburgh Steelers, it goes into Rocky's college and professional career after he was coached by Torchy for quite a bit. But I want to get back to where you were saying that you guys loaded up in the station wagon in 1969 and drove from Wisconsin all the way down to Orlando for your dad to take over and start what the then FTU, now UCF basketball program. When you guys got here, tell me about your impressions, because I know that, you were at a very impressionable age at that time. You said 12 years old. You guys get down here to, I can imagine you guys getting down here to Orlando and being like, oh my God, what have we done?
Yeah, we really had, we were Midwest people, and we had the different seasons, and we loved the snow, and then there was times you loved it and sometimes you hated it, but it was Appleton was really a tremendous place to grow up in, and it was a little culture shock, for really the whole family. My dad left a really nice gym that probably seated about 1,500 and was sold out every game, and the community was really, really behind Xavier. It was a phenomenal program. Then all of a sudden he takes over at UCF, and we actually got to Orlando in August, and then we ended up renting a house, and my dad starts his job at UCF, and they have no scholarships, there's no schedule, there's no equipment, there's no coaches other than my dad, and then the big thing was there was no players, and so he basically had to, that first year, and they were a club team that first year, and they had I think they had 16 guys on the team, but my dad had to recruit guys from the intramural department, and so what he would do, and I don't even know if they even have these courts. It was over there by the PE department and the swimming pool and the tennis courts, kind of in that area. They had outdoor courts, and the basketball, his office was probably 500 yards away from those courts. So he would just, usually you have to either, rent a car or get on a plane, or you gotta, go to Las Vegas to recruit or go this and that. And all my dad had to do that first year was just, walk over there and cause he had to find, students at the school. He didn't really have time, because the semester started probably about 10 days after we got down here, and it was too late for recruiting. Plus he didn't have any scholarships, and but he really, really handled that well. The first year they played their games at Winter Park High School, and that's a really nice gym, and it seats about 3,000, but that they had some nice crowds, and I think back then the enrollment that first year was like 2,500. And now when I went there, from 75 to 80, it was probably 12 or 14,000, and it kept going up and up and so forth. But it was definitely an adjustment for the Clark family. We really missed Wisconsin, and we missed our friends, and now my dad was fine. He was coaching, but I think the first year he missed the football, and he was really good with the X's and O's, both in basketball and, especially in football. And, but he did a really good job with that first team. They were 11-3, And, actually one of his best friends in his life was a guy named Russ Salerno, who actually played on that first team. And he ended up playing 1 year. And then the second year of the program, Russ Salerno actually became my dad's like a graduate assistant. And then he taught classes in PE. And you guys probably remember, I forgot who UCF played that night, but I was there, and you were probably there too, when they honored that first team. It was the 50-year anniversary of the first year of UCF basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys were there or not.
Yes,
Eric, I think you were there, right? Yeah.
Yep. They were there. They were hanging out at Burger U prior to the game.
Yeah.
It was
Exactly. Yeah, and that really meant a lot to those guys, and especially when it's easy to kind of forget, that time, and also even the time that I played from 75 to 80 and the Division II era, when you see them now with, the football team winning the national championship and having national exposure. And then Johnny's really done an unbelievable job with the basketball. And you think about that tip against Duke, if his son just, maybe just doesn't put as much, strength on it, they beat Duke and then they go to the Sweet 16 and that. So, but, my dad always said that when he was coaching, in the beginning, about the first 10 years, he said, someday, he said, UCF is going to be a sleeping giant. And I think that he was 100% right.
Yeah.
And, he's saying that, when the school's like 12,000, he's just saying, hey, someday, and he didn't say like in 2010 or 2005, but he said this school someday is going to be a sleeping giant. And if you think about it now, it's first or second largest university in the nation, and you got unbelievable, athletic programs and great coaches, and Danny White does a tremendous job.
Yeah, I'm going to get you to brag about yourself here for a little bit, okay? Now, in the trajectory,
keep that short.
Well, the trajectory of FTU basketball under your dad was really quick through the early part of the 1970s. You went to Bishop Moore High School, and I read that you had like over, I think, 100 or a couple hundred letters from other schools, but not a lot of offers because it was thought that you going to FTU at the time was a foregone conclusion. I guess what I'm curious about is what other schools did you go to, and did you ever, or did you think about going to, and did you ever really think about going somewhere else? Because at that time, like you said, like when we talked sometime earlier, the gap between Division II and Division I wasn't, in terms of quality of players, was not all that great. Was not nearly as great as people think.
Yeah,
so
exactly. You're right. That, not like it is now, but and I think we talked about, when you talk about a low major Division I, there's not much difference between that and a really strong Division II. Now there is a big difference between like a Flagler and a UCF or NC State, when you're talking about, large, BCS or, large schools and so forth. But when I was at Bishop Moore, I had an unbelievable experience at Bishop Moore. And if I lived in Orlando, my kids would go to Bishop Moore. And I just, I had a tremendous experience, basketball. I had some great friends, and, I even mentioned Bishop Moore probably five or six times, throughout the book, not just because I went there, but my uncle, my dad's brother, Jim, who's in the book, several times. He actually coached at Bishop Moore, and he coached. It was kind of funny with the timing. He coached at Bishop Moore, and then he left the year that we moved to Florida, and nothing. I know that sounds kind of fishy and like he didn't want to be with us, but he had about 4 years of coaching, and he kind of wanted to get into the business world. He took a job with Gillette, but he was, they had him work the Florida area, and he was stationed in Altamont Springs. But I had, like my senior year at Bishop Moore, I made first team All-State, and I was, I got the most votes in the state in terms of, they had 4 classes, 1A, 2A, 3A, and 4A back then. And we were 3A. And Bishop Moore back then, we were in the Metro Conference. So we played the big dogs like Evans and Winter Park and Boone and Jones. And it was a very, that's when Daryl Dawkins played and Stan Pitcavage. And, both those guys played in the NBA. But after Bishop Moore, I had a chance to go to University of Florida. I visited Stetson, South Alabama. I had a chance to go to Providence. But to be honest with you, I kind of knew my junior year that I wanted to play for my dad. And I didn't tell him that because I just was kind of curious to kind of see what was out there. And but Florida offered me, and I just wanted to play for my dad. I always tell people my dad was the head coach at Eastern Washington State. I probably would have went there. I just and part of that was, my brother Mike, he really had an experience with my dad because he not only played for my dad at UCF for 4 years when they started the program, but he also played for my dad at Xavier. So he played 7 straight years for Torchy. And whereas like in my situation, when I went to Bishop Moore, I didn't play for my dad. It was a guy named Bill Lowry, who had kind of a short career in the NBA with the Pistons. But that was, I knew UCF was, I didn't know back, in 75, that's when I graduated, that they were going to be a sleeping giant, because that wasn't going to happen for, 15 or 20 years. I was going to miss that time. But I was at UCF from 75 to 80. And the reason it's 5 years is because I broke my foot, 1 year, and I had to redshirt and sit out. And that was a tough year. And ironically, and I got this kind of in the book. I got a chapter on, it's called The Final Four. And that was in the 77-78 season. And the hero of that team was a guy named Jerry Prather, who was a teammate of mine for 2 years. And we were coming off a 24-4 season my sophomore year, and Jerry was he was going to be I was going to be a junior, and he was going to be a senior. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. And what happened was that a week before our first game, this is after playing, I played the first 2 years, I broke my foot in a scrimmage against a closed scrimmage against Bethune-Cookman, who were another Division II, just like us. And I broke my 5th metatarsal, and I was going to be out, 8 to 10 weeks. And the funny thing about this story is that, I was the leading scorer, my sophomore year from last year's team. And then all of a sudden, your leading scorer, breaks his foot and in a scrimmage. And then all of a sudden that team won 24 straight games.
Right.
And Jerry Prather was kind of, like I mentioned, kind of like the Michael Jordan of that team. And they started off 0-2 that season. They played 2 Division I's off the bat. They lost to Lamar University. It was coached by Billy Tubbs, and then Rice University, and they were 0-2 to start off the season.
But those were close games too. Like I'm looking at it right now. The game, they were both on the road. The Lamar game, They lose by 3 in overtime. And then the game at Rice in Houston, they lose by 2.
Yeah. And they're coming back, and they're all like, they're all saying, "Oh, geez, Bo's going to be out. Bo's going to be out." This is going to be a tough year. And then there was even a little talk, kind of like gossip a little about, well, maybe Bo, we should try to get him back, for maybe the second semester in January. Well, that team, they win the first game. That was against Flagler, ironically. And when I'm writing this, I'm thinking, gosh, their first start of the first game back was Flagler, and people are going to think, was Bo coaching, or and that. But to beat Flagler, and then they were 1-2, and then they beat Lawrence, and then they won about 4 or 5 non-conference games, and then they ended up being undefeated in the Sunshine State. They won the South Region, which UCF hosted at the UCF gym with the education building, and then they ended up beating the University of San Diego in the quarterfinal, and then they went to the Final Four in Springfield, Missouri. So that was that was probably the pinnacle of my dad's career at UCF, was reaching the Final Four.
Yeah.
That was really an unbelievable accomplishment, especially with the fact that that I redshirted. I didn't play. And we also lost, one of the UCF's best players, Calvin Lingelbach, who graduated. And so, they were kind of, they had Jerry Prather, which was almost like having the franchise, but they had a lot of newcomers, and they had some guys that were 7th and 8th men that had to play some big roles, and it's pretty obvious that they were really successful with what they did.
Yeah, that was the pinnacle of a span of 7 years where at first, again, FTU, and then in 1978, they make the change, and the name to UCF went to 6 NCAA regionals, and, of course, 1 Final Four, 120 games at least in those 6 years that they went to the postseason. Now, your name continually dots the UCF record book in terms of career points. You're the all-time leader with 2,866. The next closest guy is your brother Mike at 2,085. Yeah. The guy right after him is Jermaine Taylor at 1,979. You still have the career scoring average mark at 27.8. And you also still have the single game record of 70. What do you remember about that game in particular?
Well, I took 47 shots in that game. I was actually 33 for 47, and when I tell people, it's funny. I used to kind of in the years at Flagler, I really got to know the players and had really great relationships with them, and kind of like my dad. I wasn't as intense as my dad. I don't think a lot of coaches are, unless it's maybe kind of my dad was probably about a half of Bobby Knight in terms of intensity, and that my dad would never throw a chair or anything like that. But he was intense. But I took 47 shots, and sometimes with our players, I would say I took 47 shots, and some of them would say I didn't even take 47 shots the whole season, and that. But it was like it was just one of those games where we started off and I hit a bucket early, and no 3-point shot. I only had 4 free throws. I was 4 for 4 from the free throw line. So you're talking about 33 field goals and 4 free throws. Florida Memorial actually had a pretty good basketball team. They were NAIA, and I made like 2 or 3 shots, and then all of a sudden we started running kind of a 1-4, and I beat the guy off the dribble, and then I get another one fast break, and then here we are at halftime, and I've got 36 points at the half, and the reason I knew that was because the announcer, it wasn't like I had a little scorekeeper, like one of those coin changers. I was keeping track of my points, but the announcer kept, saying like, that was Bo's 34th point or whatever like that. And I almost kind of wanted just to tell him, hey, just, let the crowd figure it out. And there was probably only, I think at that game, my guess would be there was probably about 1,000 people. It was at Winter Park High School. And that, but it was, the thing that I remember about that game is after the game, and, a lot of guys would have gone to a frat party, or they would have gone on a big fancy date or whatever. And my brother Tom, who was the manager for my dad for 6 years, and he really, really, really helped my dad out, especially during the early years. Kind of even did some training too with taping ankles and so forth and that. But my brother Tom and I went to Steak and Shake, and that was one of the things that I had the steak burger platter and that. But it was and then I just went home, and I guess some guys would have gone, and gone to the frat party or whatever, and that. I just kind of was very, very thankful, to have that opportunity to do that. And it doesn't happen if you don't have teammates. And I was really, really lucky in my first 2 years, with playing with Calvin Lingelbach, who's the UCF Hall of Famer, and then Jerry Prather, who, in my opinion, is the best player that played at UCF. And
wow.
I even kind of mentioned that in the book. There's, and the reason I mentioned that was that that was Torchy's best team, 77, 78. And I would know, because I saw them all. I was 12 and then 13, then 14, but that was Torchy's best team, and his best player was Jerry Prather. And I think sometimes he doesn't get it. He doesn't really get the kudos, and even Calvin Lingelbach too. Boy, you talk about a guy that it was just a gunslinger and just a tough, hard-nosed player. And it was Calvin Lingelbach, and he was the one that. And I got a couple chapters about this in the book. We were losing, and if you're looking at the media guide, this was in 75, it was in 76. We were playing Rollins at Winter Park High School, and it was packed. I mean, there's 3,000 people there. That game was actually sold out a week in advance. And but it was the second time we had played Rollins in a 2-week period. We beat them at Rollins 95-78, and that was packed at Rollins too. They had 3,100 there, and it was upper deck was full, lower deck was full. Game was on Channel 35, local TV. But in that second game against Rollins in 1976, we were 9-0 in the conference, and Rollins was 8-1 in the conference. And back then we were in the Sunshine State, which was really a tough conference. Excellent coaching. You had Ed Jucker, who used to coach. He won 2 national championships at the University of Cincinnati.
Your dad helped found that league in 1975, right?
What's that?
Your dad actually helped found that conference in 1975, right?
Yeah, he was, the guy that really kind of, and I mentioned this in one of the chapters, was Norm Kay from St. Leo, was really kind of like the brainchild of that conference. I think Torchy, they wanted to consult with him and said, hey, what do you think about getting in a conference with Florida Southern and with St. Leo and Rollins? And Torchy was all for it. He wanted rivalries, and I'm telling you, you can ask anybody from that era, Bill Beekman or Calvin Lingelbach or Jerry Prather, the crowds we had were just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think some of those Rollins games, I think that, I know Amway seats 19,000 and that, but I think we could have almost had 10,000 if we would have had an arena back in that day.
Yeah.
And that was really, when you think back about that was really an important time in UCF sports, because it really, we got tremendous publicity from the Orlando Sentinel. This was pre-Magic. There wasn't, any articles about the Magic. And there wasn't any Orlando City and so forth. And when we played Rollins, we would play them and on the front page of the Orlando Sentinel, was in the day of, newspapers and now it's all on the phone or, on the internet and so forth. But, front page, giant picture of the game, Calvin Lingelbach dribbling against Tom Klusman. And then there was like 2 or 3 side stories about the game, like on page 2C or 3C or whatever. And, and it's funny too, because a lot of those clippings, my mom kind of put together some scrapbooks, and I haven't really looked at them in about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
But a lot of those scrapbooks really, really helped me with the book. It was almost like, and I called a lot of the writers and I said, hey, can I use, and everybody was really super helpful, with that. I don't know if you know Bill Buckholder.
Yep.
And they used to have a guy named Larry Guest, was the sports editor. And he was a real good friend of Arnold Palmer, but he used to cover the UCF Rollins games. But I think that was kind of like almost like the early beginnings of the UCF school spirit, where I think people really, and I'm not saying during my brother Mike's year that people weren't proud of UCF, but the crowds that we got were tremendous. I mean, back in that period during my year, 75 to 80, there used to be people that used to camp out the night before a game, not for a home game, but for like a road game at Rollins or Florida Southern.
Wow.
They would get there about 11 o'clock at night over there by the administration building by the pond, and right real close to the library. And there would probably be about 100 students that would camp out, and then the ticket window would open at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and you'd see them as you're going to your psychology class. There'd be 80 people in line, and they were wanting to get a ticket for the Rollins game, and that was really I thought that was really an important time, and people would never think that, and I was really, and that's the one real positive thing about the book is that it's almost like kind of a history lesson of UCF athletics, and I know it's a different time and place and so forth, and UCF is really truly a sleeping giant, but I think those early days, and as well as I do, the more you win, the more people jump on the bandwagon, and my dad was ultra successful both at Xavier and then really ultra successful at UCF.
It's funny you mentioned the people camping out. It's like that was Krzyzewskiville before Krzyzewskiville, right? That was Torchyville.
Yeah, that's but they'd only do it for about 3 or 4 games. But there was I remember we played Florida Southern at home. This was my senior year, and we had a good team that year. We were 25-4, and 3 out of the 4 losses that year were to Florida Southern, and they had a great coach, Al Whistle. They had a great player named John Eveling that played professional basketball in Italy. But that year in 1980, Florida Southern was ranked number 1 in the nation, and we were number 2. And the game was in the education building, which that gym's actually named after Torchy now. But I think it sat like 3,000 fans. But they would not have. For the UCF home games, they didn't have pregame sales. No, I said that wrong. Like a couple days before, you had to buy the tickets. Like when the ticket window opened up at 5 o'clock. Right. And there was lines like almost like probably 700-800 yards on both sides of the education building. and that was it was kind of neat to walk in there as a player, with your UCF bag, and the fans are all waiting for tickets, and you're going in there to kind of stretch and shoot and get ready for the game, and we just kind of came in individually. It wasn't like Auburn football or Florida, on the sidewalk, but it was a lot of the fans would say, "Hey, good luck tonight," good, and that. But the school spirit was just unbelievable at that time, and I think that really kind of set the tone for the future.
So so Torchy Clark, after that run of 6 years or 6 NCAA appearances in 7 years, he finishes his time at UCF at night after the 82-83 season.
83.
Yeah. So why did he decide to hang it up after that?
Well, like I keep saying, I mentioned this in the book, but part of the reason was that UCF was going to go Division I, and he was a little leery of that. He just didn't know if the school was ready to go Division I. At the same time, it was kind of like the perfect storm. He got an offer to coach in the CBA, and I don't know if you guys know what CBA.
Yeah, the old Continental Basketball Association, right?
Yeah, and he got an offer from a team in his hometown, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. The name of the team was the Wisconsin Flyers, and back then it's not like the G League now, where they have affiliates with. Every team has an affiliate team and so forth, like the Celtics and the Red Claws or the Clippers and the Agway Kalene Clippers or whatever. Back then, the CBA, the Wisconsin Flyers were associated with two teams, the Pacers and the Milwaukee Bucks. And but he, at that time, he and UCF did this because they wanted to do something really, really, really nice for Torchy with the success, and with him almost being kind of like the George Washington of UCF basketball. They gave him a sabbatical, a 1-year sabbatical. So what he did is that he was guaranteed not the basketball job when he came back, but he was guaranteed a teaching position. So when I say the perfect storm, it was like, okay, I can take this job in Wisconsin, in his hometown, and going to his hometown. I mean, that was just kind of a coincidence, but it did help him get that job because the owner of the team kind of knew him as a coach in Wisconsin and knew his name and his reputation and so forth. But he ended up taking that job, and then they ended up hiring Chuck Maychok. They stayed Division II for, I think it was either a year or two, and then they went Division I. And if you look at that, if you look at the media guide for about 6 or 7 years, maybe even 8 years, UCF basketball, that kind of some tough stretches. And there were some good coaches too. I think Phil Carter, and then Joe Dean was an excellent coach. Mm-hmm. But they just and a lot of teams, when a lot of Division II teams go Division I, there are some rocky roads in the beginning of it, and I think Torchy kind of saw that and he probably, in his time at UCF, he probably beat 15 Division I schools, whether it's Columbia or VMI or South Florida. Heck, when I played, we beat South Florida 2 or 3 times, and they were Division I back then, and it's kind of ironic that's the I-4 rival now, and that, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a rivalry back then, but it was a Division II playing a Division I, and as a Division II player, and I know this both as a coach and as a player, when you're Division II player and you're playing at Division I, I mean, you want to show them that, hey, you're just as good as they are. But Torchy had a lot of success against Division I's and that. But so back in '82 and '83, it was really kind of the perfect storm, and I kind of talk a little about that in the book. And it wasn't anything negative about UCF. I just think back then, I don't know if UCF was really ready to go Division I, you know, but I think for the university, because back then in '83, my guess would be that there was probably 25,000 to 30,000 students. So, you know, whether it was that year, well, they actually went Division I. I think the first year was '84, '85, because the first year when Torchy left, they stayed in the Sunshine State Conference for a year.
That's right.
But yeah.
Yeah. So he eventually does come back, and Torchy he came to the physical education department, taught everyone who came through any of the coaching classes. And I know right through to the time, I unfortunately never got the chance to take a classroom, but I know a bunch of people who did, and was beloved as a faculty member. Meanwhile, at the same time, you go into coaching, and you go to Flagler, and obviously, you know, you retire in 2017 after 31 years in coaching. If you could give me your favorite memory of your time as a coach, particularly at Flagler up at St. Augustine, what would it be?
I would probably say, my first 20 years at Flagler, we were NAIA, and then in my last 10 years, we were NCAA Division II, and we actually joined the Peach Belt Conference. But I'd say probably my greatest memory of Flagler would be in 2001 when we beat Embry-Riddle 104-101, and they were the number one team in the nation, and that was almost like a UCF Rollins type of atmosphere. It was crazy. I mean, when we played at Embry-Riddle, it was packed. When we played at Flagler, it was sold out. A few days before the game, and you had students like waiting in the hallway trying to get seats. It was crazy, and but it was unbelievable. Coaches and players, love playing in those type of atmospheres. And then I'd say that another big thrill was getting to coach all three of my sons. I think that was really, really a cool thing. They all had different stories, and they all had different offers. My oldest son, JP, is the oldest, and right now he's an assistant coach with the LA Clippers. He's with Doc Rivers, and I sure wish they were playing now, because I'd be sitting here watching them in the playoffs. But that's another story. But he played for me first, and then my middle son, who's works for Merrill Lynch and is a certified financial planner. He had some other opportunities to go to some schools, but he wanted to play for me. And then my youngest son was probably the best out of the three, and his name was Matt, and he's a basketball trainer, and he also is a full-time teacher at a Catholic school in Jacksonville. And then I'd say one more thing with Flagler that was kind of a big thrill was that when we played the Gators, when we played the University of Florida in an exhibition game.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't sound like much, but we were the first team. We were the first team to play them after they won 2 national championships. So it was kind of cool. And, you would think, they're playing Flagler, they're playing a Division II team that, at the O'Connell Center, it used to seat like 12,000. Well, for that game, there was about 11,500 people there. And they all wanted to see the Gators. But the thing that I was most proud about was about 1,000 people came from St. Augustine, from Flagler, and they were so pumped up about playing the Gators. And that was just a really, really fun atmosphere. And to make a long story short with that, we were we were down 20 at the half, 46-26. We ended up losing by 30, but we actually kind of hung around for about the first 12, 14 minutes. And now on that Florida team, Joakim Noah had graduated, Brewer had graduated, and Horford had graduated. So they were playing with, Chandler Parsons and Nikki Kalisas and so forth. But, I had to work to get that game. I'm pretty good friends with Billy Donovan, and I, kind of put a bug in his ear about 2 years before that game. And I said, hey, Billy, we'd love to play in an exhibition game. So that was really kind of a thrill, not only for me, but especially for our players and our student body and the people in St. Augustine, because, there's so many Gator fans,
right.
And Flagler fans in St. Augustine.
In 31 years, did you ever, UCF had a couple of coaching changes. I mean, obviously we know how the coaching business is. It's a tough business. Did UCF ever approach you about becoming its head coach?
No, not really. There was a few times, Jeff, to be honest with you, I think, and this happens a lot in coaching, is that when you're a small college coach, and we were NAI for 20 years, and there were some really, really good basketball, some good teams, and then we were Division II. You kind of get labeled as kind of a small college coach, and the times the job came open, I kind of threw my name out there a little, but then I had some people on the committee that just said, on the selection committee that, hey, Bo, I know you've got unbelievable history, but they really want to try to bring in a Division I, either a head coach or an assistant, someone that has Division I experience. And I didn't necessarily agree with that, but that's what the committee wanted, and that was one of the things that they thought was really important, was that whoever they brought in had, that person was able to recruit Division I athletes. And my philosophy on that is, hey, when I go out to the wild world of sports, for 31 years, and I'm watching AAU games, and I know, the Division I guys, and I know the Division II guys, you know what I mean? And,
right.
And coaching is coaching. Whether you got the ball with 12 seconds to go and the score's tied, and you're going to run a flat screen or a side screen or a side ball screen, or you're going to run a flare screen or whatever. I mean, and that. But I'm really, really thankful. Flagler has been so good to me. All three of my sons graduated there. It was a tremendous thing, and all of them had different stories. My oldest one was hurt a lot in his stretch there, and my middle one was 9th, 10th man, and then my youngest one was probably the best shooter, maybe the second best shooter in the family, and you can figure out who the first one is. But but anyway, if he's going to listen to this, he'll laugh at that. But he could really shoot the ball, and that. But that was Flagler's a tremendous institution. I always call it the Rollins of North Florida. It's just there's just really good people at the school, and I was fortunate to work for two great presidents there with Dr. Proctor and Dr. Hebert and so forth in that.
And what a cool campus too, inside the old hotel and everything. I've been there a few times. It's so neat.
Yeah, it was really special when a kid flies in, you pick him up at the Jacksonville airport, and then you bring him to campus, and maybe he saw some pictures in like an admissions pamphlet or like on internet or whatever like that. But then when you have them, walk around to see the dining hall and the dorms and some of the Spanish architecture, and and even downtown St. Augustine's just a cool place with St. George Street, and it's a great college town. It was just a pleasure for me to work there too, and you know, and it's kind of nice too that they had that was my decision to leave. I could have probably stayed another 4 or 5 years, but I really was at the time. It was almost, I just kind of felt like it was, you know, that it was kind of time to kind of go into a different direction. I didn't know I was going to end up writing a book on my dad. That was kind of, that wasn't even in the game plan. I was going to teach, but it is really a great institution, and I was really, really fortunate and blessed to be able to work there.
So your name and your number 23 hangs in the rafters at the arena at UCF, right next to your dad. How much did it mean for you personally to see him honored by UCF? And they did it a couple times. They did it in 2005, naming the court after him in the old arena. I personally still think that the court should be named after him.
It would be great if they could do that, you know, because and you know, just they could just put Torchy Clark on there, but you know, that has to go through, you know, committees and so forth, and that you guys will have to make that decision. And I understand that, you know, my dad was there, you know, like he's really kind of like the George Washington, and now we've, you know, it's just a different regime, and Johnny's, you know, such a nice guy and just an unbelievable person. In fact, his video coordinator, Jacob Ammerman, was my assistant at Flagler, you know, so that's kind of a cool connection there. And in fact, you know, Jacob's really helping me, you know, promote the book at UCF, and then Eric DeSalvo is really going to help me promote it. His dad, Joe, is a UCF graduate, actually FTU, and he was really, really close with my dad. He used to work. He went to school there, and while he was going to school, he worked for the UCF. Back then, it was called the Future, the newspaper, and it was actually called the FTU Future, and then it was the UCF Future. But Joe got to know my dad really well, so it's kind of cool having his son, you know, work in the sports information department.
I used to write for the Future. I used to cover basketball and football for the Future back in my day. So it's a lot of good folks who come through there.
Yeah. You know, when I went there, I think it came out, I think it was once every 2 weeks. And then for a stretch there, it was once a week. And then I always thought it was kind of a neat thing. And then I don't know if, you know, if they just went to online stuff or whatever, but you know, they gave us, of course, you know, great coverage, and that was always something. Like after the games, you know, you would sit there and, you know, talk to the reporters, and there was always, you know, there was always guys from the Sentinel, and then sometimes the Sanford Herald, but then there was the UCF Future was there, and then the UCF TV. I think it's WUCF, or is that what it's called? Or
now it is. Yeah, it's gone through a couple iterations, but back then it was WUCF TV, and now there's a new WUCF TV. So
yeah, let me tell you a quick story about that. And I keep saying this. I got this in the book. You put after this interview, you might not even buy the book.
No, don't say that. I don't want you to scoop yourself too much.
No, but I think the people really, really enjoy the book. But it's not just like UCF. I mean, it's Torchy Clark, you know, as a kid. It's playing at, you know, my dad played at Marquette. It's, you know, it's his first job in Wisconsin, meeting my mom, and, you know, it's his life. It's his legacy. But a huge part of the book, you know, is UCF, and, you know, I even devoted a chapter to him as a teacher, and he would want that too, because he took a lot of pride in his teaching. And what was the question again? I know I'm kind of rambling. I'm sorry if I am.
No. I guess, you know, when UCF honored both you and him, and they did it in 2005, and then they did it again in 2009. I was actually there for the one. I was working in Georgia in 2005, But when they honored the both of you hanging the banners in the new arena, what did that mean for you? Not just as an alumnus of the school, but as your dad's son, to see that happen and to see that at a moment when UCF had the resources to build a gigantic arena, a long time from when you guys were renting out Winter Park High School.
Yeah. It really meant a lot, Jeff. It was really an honor, and it's an honor if number 23 just goes up there, but to have number 23 and then Torchy Clark. But I always tell everybody and that I think my jersey, Torchy's Torchy. I mean, he's really like the George Washington, and he should 100% be up there. But I always tell everybody that I feel like I'm kind of up there because I kind of represent maybe the first 15 years of the program, and I think Jerry Prather or Calvin Lingelbach's jersey, could be up there too. I mean, they were phenomenal players and really, really, really important.
Benny Shaw too.
Benny Shaw got drafted by the Bucks, and he's in the book, and I got some really, he was a heck of a player. I was a freshman and he was a senior, and boy, he was a fun player to watch and just a fun guy to play with. But a part of me is really proud, and then a part of me almost like says, gosh, maybe they should have put Benny Shaw's up there, or Calvin's, or Jerry's, and so forth and that. But it is really an honor, and I mean, when you think about it, whether it's a graduation or UCF's playing Cincinnati in a home game, I mean, people see that banner and so forth, and that I try to go to maybe 3 or 4 UCF games, every year. I'm going to try to, since I got the book done, I'm going to try to go to more and so forth and that. But it really is an honor to do that. But like I mentioned, I think my jersey kind of represents the first 15 years of the Torchy years, basically. So.
And it still hangs there proudly. We always see it. I do public address at the arena for the women's games, and to see it there is always a good reminder of how far the program has come and how much you meant to the program. The book is called Torchy, The Humble Life of a Coaching Legend. It is out now. We have a link to the book in the podcast description as well. And before I let you go, Coach Bo Clark, I need you to settle a myth for me. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
All right.
47 shots?
Well, something similar to that. All right. If we had a 3-point line in college basketball when you played, how many more points would you have scored? And I know your career average is 31.6. What do you think it would have been if we had a 3-point line back in college ball back then?
Yeah.
I think that if you look at the total, it was like
2886. Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. I definitely would have got to 3,000 for sure, and I actually would have gotten to 3,000 if I wouldn't have got hurt. I missed like 4 games, my senior year, and then I missed like five games my junior year. So
that was the concussion, right? That was the concussion, right? Yeah. That you suffered, which was a really exactly. I didn't even get to that. That was a really scary moment. I remember. I read the SI article from the Vault, and I have a link to that in the podcast description as well. Yeah. If fans, if you're listening, if you want to, you really need to read this because it's amazing. Like you got kneed in the temple during a game, and you almost died on the basketball court, right?
Yeah, exactly. I completely blacked out, and I started. This is all like people telling me what happened. I started going into convulsions, and it's funny too. We're playing Florida Southern, and we were talking about the crowds before, and we're playing at Jenkins Fieldhouse, Florida Southern, and they've always had a tremendous program, but was packed, 3,200 people there, 33, and we're up about 8 points. And my dad, anytime with 3 or 4 minutes in the game, if he had like a 6 or 8 point lead, he was pulling the ball out. We were going to win the game because we were all really good free throw shooters. Calvin Lingelbach, Jerry Prather, myself, Benny Shaw. It was like, hey, pick your poison and that. So, and at the same time, my dad gave us the freedom that, if you were really getting pressured and you could beat a guy off the dribble and take it to the basket, well, maybe we could waste 30 seconds. But we were in a delay game, and I got a pass from Calvin, and it wasn't Calvin because that was the year before. It was from Pete Kroll. And anyway, I got a pass, and I'm reaching for the pass, and this is kind of like over by half court. We're trying to, use some clock. There's, we're up 8 with about 50 seconds to go, and we've got the game really. All we got to do is just take care of the ball and get one stop and make some free throws. But as I was going for the ball, I had a guy. There was 2 Florida. I got kind of sandwiched in between 2 Florida Southern players, and it was truly an accidental thing. It was not on purpose or intentional or anything. But I got kneed in the chest, and I got an elbow. It was actually an elbow to the temple, and the thing that I remember is I got fouled. They called a foul, and I fell back, and then the next thing I was in the Lakeland General Hospital, in the emergency room. I don't remember anything about being in the ambulance. I don't remember, I could have had 2 free throws, which, I think I might have had 37 instead of 35, but I didn't get to shoot the free throws. And, but anyway, it wasn't a funny thing at the time. My mom, she came out of the stands, and I mean, I was out there for about 5 or 7 minutes. I mean, both teams were like praying, and this is just all secondhand. And, it's funny. I don't really talk about this in the book. And the reason I didn't talk about this story was because the book is not about Torchy and Bo. The book is about Torchy. And I didn't, and I know I'm a big part of his life, but, who knows, maybe down the road I'll write a book on Torchy and Bo or Playing for Your Dad or whatever like that. But I know that story was in Sports Illustrated, but that scared the heck out of not only my mom, but my dad. In fact, my mom said that she, kissed me on the forehead, and she thought that, it was curtains and that. And, but it was, and I was the type of player, both, in high school and college. I was really dedicated. I played probably 4 or 5 hours of basketball, almost every day of my life. I was one of those guys that felt like you had to get 1,000 shots in, and you had to play 3-on-3. And I just really, really, worked on my craft, on my skill. And I've played in thousands of pickup games, and, nothing like that ever happened,
Yeah.
It was just a freak thing. It was, you see the sprained ankle and you see your knee. Let me tell you a quick story about number 23. You made me kind of think of this, and this is another story I got in the book. The reason, and this is all going to kind of tie in together, the reason I was number 23 was I wore number 23 my whole life. And in 6th grade, I played on a Catholic grade school team called St. Mary's, and that's the parish that we belong to. But my hero back then was Rocky Blyer. And when Rocky played football for my dad at Xavier, he was number 23. And so he was kind of like when I was growing up, and when I was in, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, we used to play sandlot football, whether it was in the snow or whether it was in the summer. And we all kind of took turns being Rocky Blyer. And then when I was in 6th grade, the coach said, "What number do you want?" And I said, "I'll take 23." So I wore I wore 23 in high school. I wore it in grade school, high school, and then at UCF, and it was because of Rocky Bleier. So I definitely tie that in the book because I thought that was kind of a neat story.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So Rocky Bleier writes the foreword to the book. Again, it's called Torchy, The Humble Life of a Coaching Legend. It's available on Amazon and paperback. Hardcover, you said, is coming out soon, right?
Yeah, I was hoping that they were going to come out at the same time, but I think the company that I used with the COVID, they had to kind of furlough some of the employees, so it comes from Amazon, and well, the paperback does, and I don't think Amazon's Amazon. It's so big, but the other one comes from a different company, and I'm hoping to get those. I'm gonna put that on my Twitter because actually I got a hardcover on my lap as we're talking. It's really, really nice. They're both really nice, and the company that I used did a tremendous job. Like, just to give you an example, on the back cover of the book, I have like 4 testimonials. Now you'll know 2 of these guys. You might know 3 of them, and you might even know all 4. But I got Lee Corso.
Yep.
Gave a testimonial to Torchy, and ESPN, and him and my dad were really close. They would see each other. My dad was a devout Catholic, and so was Coach Corso, and they used to see each other at Mass, and then they went out to breakfast a few times. And then Dick Bennett,
yep, longtime coach at Wisconsin.
Yeah, yeah, he did a testimonial, and then I don't know if you remember this name from the Sentinel, Tim Povtak.
Yeah, definitely remember Tim.
He wrote really, really beautiful 3 sentences. And then I got, speaking of Florida Southern, Hal Whistle. And Hal Whistle, Florida Southern won the national championship in 2001. And he, I called him and asked him if he could do something, and he gave me some great things for the book. But those are 4 pretty strong testimonials. But I think anybody that follows UCF athletics, or even was a friend of UCF athletics, or even knew Torchy, or even knew me, I think they'd really enjoy this book. And I really, it wasn't something that I wrote in 3 weeks and kind of just threw it together. It took me almost like 2.5 years to write it.
Wow.
And it was like revision after revision, and I think I got a C+ in English at UCF, but I'm a better writer now. But I think people will really enjoy, because I really get into some deep things with Torchy, with his faith and his motivation and his. I have a chapter on him being the champion of the underdog, and he really did a lot for a lot of people, and he was a big influence, and not only on his players, but it's amazing how many students that I would run into when I was recruiting throughout Florida at Flagler, and I would be like in Tampa, and I'd be at a school, and I would see one of the football coaches, and they would say, they would see Flagler, and they'd say, "Are you Bo Clark?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And then they'd say, "I had your dad for class. He was my favorite teacher at UCF." So that was always kind of a cool thing, and it was the big thing with my dad teaching is that a lot of coaches would be kind of lazy in the classroom, and they would just maybe not a lot, but some coaches, they would just say, "Hey, guys, I'm going to roll out the balls, and I'm going to go in there and watch tape on Rollins or Florida Southern, and I'll be out in about an hour." My dad, when he had a 3-hour course for 3 straight hours, he would tell story after story after story, and he very seldom let his class go early, and the kids just loved it. And I got a lot of those stories in the book, and I think people will enjoy it.
That's awesome. I ordered my copy today. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I don't care if it's hardcover, softcover, or written on parchment and a scroll. if you're a UCF fan, you got to get your hands.
We're going to have it in ebook too. That should be in about 2 weeks on ebook. And I know some people like to do the Kindle thing and so forth, and that was one of the options. And I said, yeah, let's do it and so forth, and that. And some people can look at it on an iPad or whatever. So it's but it was truly a labor of love. But at the same time, I was really kind of honored, and I kind of feel really kind of privileged to be able to kind of write his story and so forth and that. But it was he was a big part of the university, and I think he still is too.
Yeah, he definitely is. And certainly to those of us who follow UCF basketball as closely as we do, he's on the Mount Rushmore for sure. Head coach, former head coach at Flagler, and UCF's all-time leading scorer, Bo Clark, and now published author, Bo Clark, joining us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Bo, thank you so much for your time, for your insight, for your memories. And, here's to everything clearing up so that we can have some basketball later this fall. And let us know when you come down to Orlando for a game. We want to see you, okay?
Yeah, heck yeah. I'd really like to come down and see the Knights and maybe help promote the book. And I'm just hoping everything's, everybody's safe with the COVID and, that people make good decisions and we just kind of pray for everybody out there. So.
Amen to that. Thank you again, Coach. Wow. Thank you so much to Bo Clark once again. And the book's entitled Torchy, The Humble Life of a Coaching Legend. I got a link to the Amazon page in the show description, in the show notes. If you're a UCF fan, you need to get your hands on this thing as quickly as humanly possible. It's I know my copy is coming. I can't wait to get to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Wasn't that was really something? What a trip in the Wayback Machine, Elo.
Yeah, it really was. Great to talk about, obviously, his dad, Torchy, which is what the book is about. And who would have known with Rocky Blyer, as he talked about in the story, and Torchy being the football, basketball coach. Really, it was it really is intrigued by him talking Jerry Prater and high praise for him as part of those Final Four teams. And it was pretty awesome to listen to that and just kind of get a historical perspective from that time, as well as his own game. But it's interesting. He's not really one that likes to talk about himself. I think he likes talking about other people, and I think that's why I think he really wanted to do this book, because like he mentioned in the interview, this is about his dad. It's not really about it's about his dad and the life, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, true labor of love. And like I said, hop over to Amazon, pick up a copy, pick up a friend a copy, because I'm really looking forward to this. All right, when we return, we will talk about some goings on around the site. We'll talk with Murph about Neville Clark, new Minnesota Viking, and a couple other things as well. Ben Lively over in Korea, how things are going, and a few other things coming down the pike. Stick around. We're back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy with you. UCF_Banneret on Twitter, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret, and of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com. Brian Murphy's here with us. Hello, Brian.
Murph.
Hi, Jeff.
Turns out we got some content this week, don't we?
Well, I mean, if you listen to last week's podcast, it's the same content I teased then, but
we all did. We all did, Murph.
The COVID time machine is really hitting us all hard around here, isn't it?
There's a lot of things.
Murph, in Murph's defense, okay, Murph has been sacrificing, waking up at weird hours to follow UCF's own Ben Lively in the KBO. So Murph's got to pass, because I don't even want to. I mean, what are your hours like these days watching the KBO, the Korean Baseball Organization, and following Ben Lively?
Well, I mean, it's actually not that bad. Like I said when the KBO started, I'd much rather get up early than stay up late for like a 1 a.m. game, and I haven't hated it. Like getting a coffee at 5:30 in the morning, just doesn't seem like the worst thing in the world. And I'll tell you what, the KBO experience of just watching the game, and I'm watching these games on Twitch mostly because ESPN only carries one game per day, so most of the time I'm watching games on Twitch. The experience has been pretty fun because you get the Korean broadcast with the Korean commercials, which as an American are a total trip. It's a mind thing.
Don't worry, we know what you meant.
Yeah. And then the game itself really rolls. I mean, you can have, a really high scoring game that finishes in 2 hours and 40 minutes because, a pitch is coming every 10 to 15 seconds.
Why is that?
Yeah.
I've noticed that. I've watched my share on the ESPN version, usually because they re-air the games in the afternoons a lot of times. So a lot of times I'll put it on and have it on. And I have noticed that, Murph, that they have a quicker tempo, which I would assume would work to Lively's advantage because he was used to that when he was at UCF. I'm sure you'll tell us. But why is that?
I do know that they did try to implement a 12-second pitch clock, I believe a couple years ago, but I don't know if it's still like the hard and fast rule. I do know that like if you want to like be like nitpicky about it and like really time it from when they get the ball back to when they release it again, like some guys will go up to 15 seconds, maybe a little more, but really it's most pitches are between 10 and 15 seconds from pitch to pitch, assuming there's no ball in play or foul ball or anything like that. And it makes watching the game a lot more interesting, a lot more captivating because there's something always happening. And I mean, like I said on Twitter back when Lively started on Tuesday, if it can happen in Korea, they can do it in the major leagues. I mean, there will be some adjustments for major league pitchers who are used to taking 30 seconds and sort of owning the mound. But that's not good television. And this is a TV product. And just watching the KBO, it's much more. It's not more entertaining because of I don't know the teams and players as well, but it certainly keeps you locked in because there's always something happening.
It's interesting. I'm always interested by like how other places play the games that we know because the games are what they are. I mean, the rules are the rules, but I'm just fascinated by how different cultures treat games that we're familiar with. Like Japanese baseball is different, than American baseball in certain respects and how it's played and what is considered, and what is considered, a well-played game, just like Korean baseball is. And I think that's the part that's most fascinating to me. What do you think?
No, I agree with some of that. I just think that, it can be a similar game. And if you watch the KBO, like, it's clear that like the talent level isn't there, but like if you are familiar with like AA baseball, like what this looks like. It looks like that. I mean, there's some mistakes and stuff that you don't usually see at the major league level. Also, they steal a lot, which you don't see at the major league level at all, really. But it can be the same game, and it can be the same, sort of fast-paced product. You just need to stress it. And your players, they'll put up a fuss, but they'll get it after a while, and everyone will adjust to it, and the fans will be better off for it. The sport will be better off for it. If we want to reduce time of game in baseball, which has been, the A1 topic for game adjustments, we're not going to do it by, getting rid of intentional walks or limiting pitcher visits to the mound, or catcher visits to the like that. That's so like small potatoes. This thing, you're taking out 10 to 15 seconds per pitch.
Yeah.
That's significant.
All right, so never mind all that. How's Ben Lively doing?
Ben Lively's doing okay. Certainly he did better on Tuesday. It was his second start, and it was a better start for him. His first start, he gave 2 home runs. This is the second day of the season. He gave 2 home runs and sort of just never looked comfortable with any of his pitches. And really, he's mostly a fastball, curveball guy. But just didn't look comfortable and was working out a lot of jams in his first start. His second start, though, on Tuesday, a lot better fastball command. Did give up a home run off a curveball. His curveball still wasn't very sharp. It still rolled quite a lot. But I know this is a long-winded sort of esoteric way of saying he's doing better. But he really was. Like, if you watched him pitch, like, he was fairly impressive with how he was able to move his fastball in the zone to each side of the plate. And I thought he had some smooth innings. He started to tire out once he got into the sixth. He was able to finish the sixth, but he allowed his second run of the game. He ended up leaving that game after 6 innings, trailing 2-1, and unfortunately got tagged with a loss. So he's 0-2 on the season, but certainly he's much better in this most recent start than in the first one. And you would hope to see him carried forward. I imagine it would be another Tuesday or Wednesday start. I really haven't gotten in the flow of how often pitchers pitch, but mostly it's about once a week because the league traditionally takes Monday off. So with that day off for the entire league.
Why is that? Have they explained that? Is anybody why they take the Monday off?
I don't know. It just might be custom. Okay. I mean, this, and it wouldn't make it any different from the Japanese leagues, which have a pitcher for a certain day. It's sort of like that, where if you're taking 1 day off per week, it's gonna be really hard to be a 2-start pitcher in any league. So some guys have their day, and they just start on that day every week. So we'll see, but I imagine that Lively's next start will come either Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, and I would have told you who it's against, but my Google Chrome just crashed.
How good is the team he's on? I mean, is it a very good team, not a good team? What's the kind of the prognosis on his team outlook?
Yeah, it hasn't been very good. Certainly when he's pitched, they just haven't given him much run support. They're 3-5. I do know that they were not hitting much at all. I don't want to compare like Korean players to Major League players, but like for those who like really like Major League Baseball and follows it religiously like I do, to see a team with like Tyler Saladino hitting cleanup, which is what the Samsung Lions have. It's Lively's team. Tyler Saladino should not have, and I know he did, but he's mostly a 9th-place hitter in the major leagues, and now he's in the 4-hole, 5-hole for the Samsung Lions. And it's partly because they don't have many better options. They just really struggled. And like I said, with his last start, with Lively's last start, he deserved a better fate than what he got. It was just, he just got not enough support.
Well, right now they're 3-5, which is in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7th place. Out of 10. Is it Lotte or Lot? How do you pronounce that? Lotte?
I mean, it's a lot. Yeah.
Like Lot or I don't know. I feel like an idiot for
that, Jeffrey.
I know. See, now we got to find out. Well, they're in first place, tied for first place at 6-1 with the NC Dinos. So that's what we're. And then the Kiwoom Heroes are at 6-2, leading the league. You got 3 teams right around 4-3, 4-4, and then Samsung at 3-5. And yes, the teams are named after companies because that's who sponsors the team, which is the case in a lot more places than you think around the world. I know that in Japan that's the case.
I mean, the Japanese have a successful softball league that all the companies own it, and it's more profitable than here in the States.
Right.
You know what's amazing too is if you watch the KBO and you see all the advertisements all over the jerseys, it really fades in the background quickly. And I know MLB purists are like kvetching because we have, the Yankees jersey now has a little Nike swoosh over one of the I know.
Gasp.
God forfend. But look, that is coming to Major League Baseball. Certainly as they need to find more revenue streams. Wink, wink. And if you look at Korean baseball, it's out in full force. Like they look like NASCAR. It's basically like they are the hood of a Ford at this point. But it doesn't affect the game. It doesn't blind you. It's not like off-putting, or it doesn't distract you from the game. Like if you want to know what's coming in the next 10 to 15 years as far as sponsorship with ads on jerseys, that's what it's probably going to look like, and it's not that big of a deal.
Right. Well, I mean, we're immunized a little bit from the fact that we've been watching soccer where they have that for years and years now, right? And then
Americans still in large have not been watching soccer. Well,
I get that, but the other thing is like you said, it just kind of fades into the background. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Can we get a Ben Lively jersey? That's my question.
Is that for sale?
Is that an option? Can you look into that for us for next week?
No, I'm going to look into it right here. Look at the Samsung Lions team store. Let's see. I know I saw his jersey, but his name is apparently spelled in Korean.
Yes, and I wish I knew Korean characters, but I saw that too.
So, well, I mean, there is a Samsung Lions store on prepsportswear.com, but that doesn't really help anybody.
This is fantastic.
I know this is the content that everyone came here for. All right. So what? So all right. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on Ben's next start and go from there. So keep an eye.
I would imagine it would come versus against LG, which would be
another cell phone company.
The LG Twins, who are currently, I believe, God darn it, the LG Twins are 4-3, so that would come. Well, that they're now, but that would come Tuesday or Wednesday, and both of those games are set for 5:30 a.m. Eastern. So, I mean, I'll be up. I mean, it's fine.
By the way, we need to have a talk about this one jersey that the Samsung Lions wear that has a scene from The Lion King across it. Have you seen this?
So?
Oh my gosh.
What's the problem?
This is fantastic. I love it. I need that in my life. All right. Anyway. A little bit.
Tweet Murph at 5:30 in the morning when he
spokes_Murphy for Lively Watch. There's an NCAA bit I want to talk about real quick because we're starting to see some things happen with speculation articles on scheduling, which I don't think are hard enough for us to really get in on too much. But so the NCAA did come down with some news that the dead period has been extended. Now, Murph, I feel like this is one of those things that people say, "Oh, the dead period's extended," and fans are like, "Oh yeah, sure, that's going to affect some blah 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 blah," and then you turn around and whisper to the next, like, "What's the dead period?" So, Murph, can you please tell us what's the dead period? What does that all mean?
The dead period is a period in which there can be no in-person contact on campus or off, but really in-person, face-to-face contact between teams and recruits. So really, for all NCAA sports at the Division I level, there can be no face-to-face contact between anybody in the program as far as coaches and recruits through June 30th. Now that came down on Wednesday, and the NCAA board that passed this also wrote that they will re-examine this deadline on May 27th, which is just about 2 weeks from now. And at that point on May 27th, they might choose to extend that deadline further into the year. I will say though, so this has been in place since March, really, when everything started shutting down. And if you talk to the coaches, as we have, and I remember like Willie Martinez, the secondary coach for UCF, he said like recruiting has not really changed, and if anything, because of just the extra time the guys have because they're always at home, you have maybe even a little more time to talk to your recruits through FaceTime, Zoom, just on the phone call, whatever. Mm-hmm. You can still reach out to your recruits. And if anybody who's been on Twitter and follows UCF recruiting, it's not like UCF has been in the wilderness. Like they're still getting guys. They're still offering to a ton of guys out there. They're in a lot of Final 5 or Final 8 choices for a lot of highly thought of recruits. So they are still doing a lot of work. Just in a different manner. They cannot have any sort of, connection physically face-to-face. And that obviously, hurts UCF's ability to sell itself from a campus standpoint, a community standpoint, and to show the recruits what they would have, all the amenities they would have if they sign with UCF. So it does hurt them that way, but it doesn't really slow down their ability to recruit. And if anything, because of the time that they have now, I mean, in the situation we're in, the coaches have found themselves with more time to recruit and thus more time to reach out to maybe more players and just give yourself more options.
Here's an interesting question. So on the NCAA's website, it says, what is a dead? There's a dead period, a quiet period, an evaluation period, and a contact period. A contact occurs anytime a college coach says more than hello during a face-to-face contact with a college-bound student-athlete or his or her parents off the college's campus. Now, a dead period You may not have face-to-face contact, may not watch student-athletes compete or visit their high schools. Coaches, it says here, may write and telephone student-athletes or their parents during a dead period. Now, let me ask you this, Murph. Do you know whether or not a Zoom call counts as a phone call?
They've been on the phone. So does it count as a phone call?
But is it face-to-face contact?
Yeah, because FaceTime would be a phone call too. What they want in the dead period is just not face-to-face physical,
like in-person contact. Okay.
In person.
See, this is where I think this is the part where we all agree on this, right? That the NCAA seriously needs to have an overhaul of the recruiting rulebook because technology has outpaced that rulebook dramatically, right? I mean, and this is an example of that, isn't it?
I believe you want to answer your own rhetorical question because I know you have
well,
something to say.
Okay, fine. I mean,
No, I'm letting you have the floor.
No, I mean, I don't know. I look at this and I'm like, this all kind of seems a little bloated and old fashioned.
Jeffrey, you're saying the NCAA is out of touch. I can't believe it.
Well, I don't know if out of touch is the right adjective. I would say that they're antiquated. I mean, we're still sending in letters of intent via fax.
I know.
Like do they even make fax machines anymore?
Apparently so.
Do. That's what I see all the time on signing day. That's where everybody's saying.
Well, no. I'm convinced that Manny Messaguer gets his fax machine out of the closet and brings it over to the coach's office and drops it off the night before, so he can start, and tests it just so that UCF can make sure that they're getting, recruits. If they've stopped manufacturing VCRs, I would imagine that they probably stopped manufacturing fax machines.
I doubt it, and I don't think that like Alabama and Notre Dame are receiving their letters of intent through 1989 Toshiba fax machines. I'm sure they've got new brands somewhere.
I'm not ruling it out.
All this entire episode so far has been Google searching random things. One, it's Ben Lively's Korean jersey, and now it's fax machines. Where are we?
We're coming to the end, is what we're doing. We are eyeball deep in the Corona apocalypse.
You ever watch that show, Murph, Quantum Leap, with Scott Bakula, where he goes back in time?
I mean, I know of it. I didn't really watch it a ton, but I know. I get the reference. The reference is lost.
I know. I saw it promoted on the NBA on NBC back in the day.
You can get a 4-for-1 printer, fax, scanner, copier. It doesn't have to be just a fax machine, and those things sell like hotcakes. I've bought 2 4-for-1 printers in the last 6 months because the first one I got was awful, but it had fax capability. Everyone's fine, Jeffrey. No one's turning into an old-fashioned Luddite where they can only use a fax.
Except for one day a year. Anyway, all right, let's get the hell out of here before anything else happens. Again, you can follow us at UCF_Banneret on Twitter, Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret, blackandgoldbanneret.com, and get us individually at Jeff_Sharon, Eric Lopez Elo, and Spokes_Murphy. Murph, you've got the Novell Clark thing coming out, when time permits.
Give us a little tease, Murph.
Give us a teaser, Murph. Come on.
No, I know it's just been I've been dragging my feet. I've got blisters for the first time in my life. I am.
You did it again, didn't you?
It's gonna get out there soon. I'm aiming for it to be Thursday night. I have something else earlier in the day. We're supposed to be meeting with a UCF coach in the morning on Thursday morning, so I'm gonna write off of that as well, and then I'll try to have the Novell thing all wrapped up and ready to go, and just put it out there for public consumption by Thursday night, and just get it off my mind. And
then Eric, what do you got coming up?
Well, we got another podcast coming up soon. Maybe as early as this weekend or early next week. Not sure. You kind of decide when it comes out, but it's going to be the 2005 15-year anniversary. Actually, as people listen to this episode, it's on the 15-year anniversary. Believe it or not, folks, UCF winning their first conference title in the A-Sun tournament, their last ever day as far as the A-Sun competition was concerned 15 years ago. So we did a special podcast on that. That's going to come out soon. And then in the near future, we got some more cool podcasts coming out. We got Justin Pope, Jason Arnold coming out soon, celebrating the 2001 UCF baseball. We got some baseball podcasts coming out, special UCF Rewind editions, where Brian Murphy will make his return to talk UCF baseball.
You know what's nuts, guys? This upcoming weekend, I'm like 99% sure of this as I look at the schedule very quickly. This upcoming weekend would have been the final regular season weekend for UCF baseball.
Man, that's
right. I don't know
right.
about all that, but I know this was regional weekend for softball. UCF could have been, in theory, hosting, like, in fact, on my In the Circle podcast, I did a friend of mine did a simulation of the season. UCF ended up being a 12 seed and would have hosted a regional for the first time in program history. So yes, Murph, thank you for the reminder of what we're missing out this weekend.
Where did the last 2 months go? Really, when you think about it, it's really been something. But I've got something coming up that I've just been. Man, I went down a rabbit hole this week. We've been a little light on the written content because I've just it's What If Week.
It's not our fault.
I know. I confess. So at this point, I'm just owning it. It's What If Week at SB Nation, and my first What If question was, what if UCF joined Conference USA in 1995? And 3,700 words later, I'm within the last 5 years.
Yeah, and see, that's the problem. So I have had a couple of ideas of what I would want to do for that as well. Like I keep brainstorming ideas for what if Scott Frost wasn't hired? What if it was Dino Babers and not Scott Frost who was hired to be UCF's head coach after George O'Leary? And also, what if Aubrey Doggins' tip had gone in against Duke? And I feel like for both those topics, I have enough to turn into a quote unquote article. But yet then I look at your please don't
do that to yourself.
I can't stack up with this.
Please don't do that to yourself. I mean, don't measure it up. I have just, it was one of those things where I thought I could turn it into a bullet list, and then it just went way over the top. And at this point, I'm so deep into it, it's like I gotta just finish the marathon.
You've done much more future casting than I could ever imagine doing. I could certainly tell you some things about what wouldn't happen, but as far as saying what would happen in this completely hypothetical scenario, you have gone to the nth degree.
Oh, why the hell not? Right? I mean, let's
By the way, Murph, we did kind of address the what if tip-in on our UCF Rewind special on the UCF Duke basketball game when we look back at that game. We did kind of
but there's a couple other things there. We absolutely did. So if you want the shorthand answer to what I just said, go listen back to that podcast, which was really good. But there's some other things too that as far as that I think if that tip goes in, it doesn't only affect obviously UCF's season, but it affects their program at large and some of their players at large and maybe some of their coaches. But again, what I had thought of as far as here's what I would say, it would be like skimming the surface compared to Jeffrey and his Ken Burns-esque, documentation of what would happen in this season.
I've got photos, everything. Yeah.
Listen, I mean, that's sometimes you got to be careful with the projects you pick, man. I've picked this top 100 male athletes. And you have no idea the stuff. I mean, it's crazy. Now we just had Bo Clark. My head's spinning now. It's just with some of the guys we talked about during the interview. I mean, sometimes you got to be careful there, with the projects you pick, because it could, I mean, it's fun, but we do have to move on at some point and kind of come to a conclusion at some point.
I know. At some point, I just got to suck it up, finish it off, and get it done. It's going to be. Hopefully I can get it done by Friday. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, because I mean, I'm still, taking care of the kids and time I can write it at night. I literally stayed up until 3:00 in the morning one night.
Well, if only you had other
and I'm
content.
still not done. Yeah, I know, and we're all backed up on that. So, we'll figure it all out. All right.
I will say this blockage of ours has given Anthony Linehan's piece a lot of breathing room, which I've really enjoyed.
Yes.
It stresses something, and by the way, Anthony's fantastic. He does a lot of great film breakdown. And for those of you who like X's and O's stuff, he's just fantastic at that. But it stresses to you, once again, how dangerous UCF's offense could be in football if they could just find themselves and develop a tight end that can catch and block, which they really haven't had since Jordan Akins, and if they can do that, my God, the sky's the limit with this offense. And Anthony does a really good job, albeit very esoterically, does a very good job of breaking down why that can be.
Yes, if you don't take a look at Anthony's piece right now on how UCF uses formations and matchups to attack defenses, you really need to, because it's not just a breakdown. It's also an explanation of really what offenses try to do these days. It's modern offenses, and it's really fantastic. You get the chance to see that. You get to see Murph's piece on Novell Clark coming out soon. Hopefully, my piece on the what if coming out, I don't know,
also,
eventually.
By the way, another shout out, one of our other writers, Andrew, got a good piece there. The UCF NFL guys and their schedule, the NFL schedule. He actually broke it down in some of the headliners where some of the UCF guys would be scheduled to play at prime time and then during the NFL season. That's also up on the site right now. So
right.
We got a great staff. Let's give a shout out. These guys, we got a great staff. Really excited. We got a lot of different dimensions on the site, and working to providing a lot of different content from different perspectives. UCF, really, what other place? You're not going to find that anywhere else.
You are not. And so, go ahead, Murph. I'm sorry.
I want to also add in it's pronounced Lotte. Going back to 30 minutes ago, it's pronounced Lotte Giants.
Lotte.
So
okay.
This second time I want to apologize. Last week I apologized to Todd Dagenet for absentmindedly, perhaps putting down volleyball, which was not my intention. And then I want to apologize to all of Korea for butchering their language. This will also be a probably recurring theme in this podcast. Jeffrey, do you have any parting shots on Liberty being on UCF's schedule?
I'm not going there. I've made my opinion clear on Twitter. If you want to
UCF Liberty,
if you want to find that out, the greatest day in UCF football history was when UCF defeated Auburn. The second greatest day was when they defeated Liberty 63-0 in 2002. But anyway,
wow. All right. By the way, shout out Corey Lovett, former UCF tennis player, is on a top 100 list, which is out, where he's top 100. He gave me a message, give it a shout out. He's playing professionally. He's a doubles player before the tour was shut down. But he wanted to give a shout out and appreciated being on the list. And a shout out to Harrison Hukari, who I got a good chance to talk to over the weekend. He was listener to the show as well, debating the baseball great teams. And so I really appreciate some of the athletes that have listened to the show and even feedback on our content and stuff. It's a lot of fun.
That makes me so happy to hear that the coaches and the athletes hear it, because not only are they connected, but if they care and they think that they care about our show enough to listen, that means we're doing our job, and they're the ones who we do this about. So if you want to keep up on the latest with us, UCF_Banneret, Facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret, and blackandgoldbanneret.com. As always, thanks again to all of our guys on staff: Jeremy Brenner, Derek Warden, Anthony Lenahan, Andrew Glukov, everybody who's been helping us out throughout this entire time. Make sure you also follow Chaz Short and Luke Saris as well, and all the work that they've been doing. Thank you so much to all those guys. It's just been great. And thanks to you, the fans, for listening. Really hope you enjoyed the interview with Bo Clark. Make sure you follow Bo at Bo Clark Camp, all one word, Bo Clark Camp. He does his camps locally in the Orlando area. And don't forget his website also, Bo Clark Basketball, BoClarkBasketball.com. And make sure you get the book Torchy, The Humble Life of a Coaching Legend, available on Amazon. Link is in the description. For all of us here at Black and Gold Banneret, I'm Jeff Sharon. Thanks for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.